Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Frontlines podcast, episode number 4. And today we are going to be talking about the challenges of leading a team. And just a quick reminder, we are on all the major streaming platforms and YouTube. So if you're watching the video here, I appreciate it. Leave us a comment down below. But today we do have a special guest on, and we will get to him in just a second. But thank you again, y'all, to everyone that is a member here in the channel. I do appreciate the support. If you want to check that out, you get your name up here in the video, and you get early access to a lot of the content and access to our Discord. But without further ado, our special guest today is one of my friends, Colin Pelosi, the sexiest man alive. Colin, how you doing today, bud?
Sir, thank you. I'm doing well, man. Doing well. It's been a busy week for me, but dude, happy to hop on for a little interview and talk about some leadership.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. So for those, there might be a few viewers actually that do know you that watch this, but for the majority of the people that are watching this, introduce yourself. Tell me, tell everyone what you do, who you are, what you do for a living, all that good stuff.
Certainly, yeah. So as I'm said, my name's Colin Pelosi. I work for an organization called USA Baseball as the Assistant Director of Creative Services. My main role here at USA Baseball is to oversee content creation for the organization. I help lead a video team of about 5 interns in our organization. So the main role for me is to kind of oversee that and kind of help with the content creation process and do that. So it's a lot of content creation and making sure we are hitting our goals and making some really great content for our organization.
Nice, man. Yeah, and we've definitely bonded over a lot of the content creation aspects over the last couple years. I know that because, as most of you guys know in here that do watch from this channel, content creation is something that I used to make a living off of. And so me and Colin definitely relate a lot there. And we both relate in general with leading a team. So I'm also leading technicians at my job as well. And so I think me and Colin have just been talking recently about different aspects of leadership when it comes to leading. And so, yeah, man, I really appreciate having you on. So I want to kind of start off.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah, man. The first, so it's the challenges of leading a team, but I do want to talk before we get into the challenges. I kind of want to ask you, so what is your most enjoyable aspect or the biggest thing that you like about leading a team?
Right. So you kind of mentioned it right off the rip there. There are a lot of challenges, but there are a lot of really fun and some of the really, really good parts of leading the team. One of my, favorite parts about leading a team actually is, I get to kind of take a step back almost. So I lead a team of 5 video interns, and I have one person under me that's in a full-time role as a coordinator of creative services, whose main role is video production. And for a really long time, it was just really myself kind of leading our whole entire interns. And really, I'm able to kind of take that step back and give a little bit of ownership and leadership to James, who just started recently for us. So, my role is really helping behind the scenes and, crafting the vision for our videos. And then James and our interns are out there shooting content for us and really in the nitty gritty of the edits. It's not just that too. And, it's being a mentor to these guys. A lot of these guys are coming in, really talented, really talented guys who are in the creative world in college, and they want to come in and, make a big difference at our organization. And at USA Baseball, we try really, really hard, and I try to really, really hard to myself to foster an environment of giving these guys a lot of opportunity. So I take that role really seriously, and, it's making sure that they feel like they're always a part of the team and making sure that they're never lesser than what they are. They are a team. We are a team. When one thing I always kind of say to the interns is, when I'm kind of going through feedback and, talking to these guys is, I'm not always what I say isn't always right. Right. So it's kind of fostering that an environment where, we have this, trust among everybody where, I'm ultimately just there to try to help them. Lastly, I think I kind of mentioned it in a little bit too, is, it's fostering that fun environment. I try really, really hard to, foster that environment where, everyone can have fun, but also, get the job done. We're a professional working environment, so we have content needs and we have content goals that we got to hit on a weekly basis. But as long as everyone's working at a really high level and getting things done, I love joking around and I love laughing. And that's the kind of environment that I want in my team because I like feeling loose. I don't like showing up to work having this weight on me and this stress on me. So having a team that can be really fun and to be around is, that is by far one of my favorite things about leading a team.
That's awesome, man. I really like that. And I definitely think that that goes a long way with a lot of these younger kids that come into these jobs, especially for me as well. Like, really, just I love seeing the guys. I mainly lead guys, but I love seeing the guys, just like you said, kind of grow and mentoring them because a lot of these guys that I work with, they don't really know what they want to do with their life in some ways. They're kind of just looking and searching. And so it's kind of cool to see guys that, like, when you start to see some like fire in their eyes of like, oh, I really like this or that. And even if they don't stay with our company, it's cool to see just guys kind of pick themselves up and I guess in a way find what they're passionate about. And so I think for me, that's probably one of my favorite things is just being able to see someone striving to do what they want to do instead of just kind of going into the job for just a job. And so I think like what you're saying about coming in loose to the job, not stressing, is a big thing because I just think so many people can just be so stressed when they go into work. But yeah, that's really good, man. I really like that. And do you mainly lead guys, or are there some girls as well on your team?
So we always try and bring in some diversity. So I always try to hire some females. So on this year we have 3 guys and 2 girls on our team.
Okay.
And I really try to foster that balance in our team. Because we need females and we need males too. They both, in the content world, to be honest, there's not a lot of female content creators out there, and so me, I want to make sure I'm doing everything I can to foster some really talented female creators, and mentor them and coach them up, because I do want to see them out there, at bigger roles, going on and crushing it in the creative world.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And I guess I didn't realize there's not as many female content creators. And I think about that, I'm like, yeah, that's like when I think about YouTube now, I'm like, yeah, that's actually pretty true. I guess it's a little bit more popular now than it was maybe 5 to 10 years ago. But yeah, that's actually that's a really good point too. But okay, so with that, let's get into some of the challenges then. So what do you think for you specifically are maybe the biggest challenges of leading a team?
Yeah, so by far the biggest challenge of leading a team for me is, I got to say, managing personalities and managing people. Obviously, that is, a big part of being a leader in a team, but it's managing personalities. Everyone is so different. One thing I really tried to do at the very beginning of bringing these interns in, and typically we have a pretty short turnaround of bringing them in, getting them up to speed, and they're out there shooting content, creating for us, is really trying to foster that kind of one-on-one time where I can kind of really get a feel for that person, and it takes time to really get to know them, to be honest. So you have to be able to talk to people differently. The same way you talk to someone, one of my guys is that I'm not going to talk to that guy the same, or another guy the same way. So it's kind of knowing how I need to give feedback and knowing how I need to give critique person to person. That's something I learned over time. So this is kind of my third year managing interns. And man, I tell you what, I was very poor at managing kind of personalities and getting to know people at the very beginning. So yeah.
No, that's good. I think we both have bonded over this a little bit actually, and yeah, I would agree that I have another thing as well with that, but I would say too, for me, that's a challenge because you just have so many different types of people that they respond and they react to feedback, criticism completely different. You can't like you said, you can't say certain things to one person, but you can to another person. Like there's a guy at my job that I can be very blunt with, and he doesn't care because he's just rough around the edges kind of deal. But then there's like other people that it's like you kind of have to be a little bit more tactful. But yeah, I another thing that for me that so I feel like I connect well with people's personalities. Like I feel like I can understand them quicker maybe than other people can. Like that's just kind of I feel like a skill that I have. But with that, I think one of my biggest challenges is being able to be like disciplinary or hard on people when I need to be. Like being able to tell them like, hey, like, this is not great, or like, hey, why weren't you doing this kind of deal? Like almost confrontation. I'm still growing in that, but I don't know. Do you find yourself having that same problem?
Yeah, it's very difficult being confrontational, especially when we're giving feedback and stuff like that. It's a little different, but one of the things is another challenge is kind of goes with this is kind of putting out fires, right? My role here isn't only managing video content. I actually oversee a live system that kind of broadcasts all our fields here at USA Baseball. And one of the things that you have to do is put out fires on a consistent basis, and you need to be able to identify an issue, come up with a solution, and most importantly have an action plan that is solving that issue. Things aren't perfect by any means, and things happen that are out of everyone's control, but when those issues do arise, it's nipping them in the bud quickly, and then having those talks, going back to those confrontational talks, it takes time. It's not easy to talk to those people. I think even this past week I had to have a few confrontational talks where, I wasn't, 100%. I was, comfortable having the conversation, but you're still uneasy when you're having to come down on somebody. And, kind of going back to this, environment that I foster, a fun and, free, environment. Sometimes I do have to take that role of being really serious and, taking an issue and, kind of solving it one-on-one, and, not coming down on somebody, but having just a, professional talk with somebody to try to correct an issue so it doesn't continue to happen again.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And I would say for me, like my biggest example of that is you mentioned nipping things in the bud. My boss always says, like, whenever we hire a new person and they start doing something that is not great for the company, and an example I'll give is like, so we have to keep our own time cards essentially, right? And that's
difficult.
Yeah, it's online, and a lot of our guys, unless they are in a senior position, they're not salaried, so they're hourly, and so it's based off integrity, and it's like, sometimes guys, when they come in, they don't understand how the hours work. And it sounds crazy to say that. And maybe people listening are like, wait, what do you mean? Like you work your hours, you get paid, like, right. But in our field, it's, you're going all like if, I don't know how many people here know what I do, but I basically am on construction sites a lot. And so a lot of these guys are on sites, they're traveling, right? All this other stuff. So sometimes hours are kind of weird because it's like, okay, when does your hours start? Do they start when you get to the office? Do they start, when you leave your house? Do they end when you do this, right? And we have all these we have all these like metrics for billable time. But some of these new guys, when they come in, they're billing way too many hours, and it doesn't seem right on their time cards. And it might be because someone trained them wrong. Another tech told them one thing or the other. And it's difficult because we have to go to them and we have to ask them, like about their time card. And that's like one of the biggest things I hate doing, because I don't want to question someone's integrity without having any sort of like evidence of it. You know what I mean? It just doesn't, it feels terrible doing that, but it's like my boss always talks about how like guys will try to, put extra hours in, and you have to really nip that in the bud immediately, or it's just something that will keep trending on. And so I think for me, like that's something I'm still trying to get better at, is just being able to like be a little bit more direct when it comes to that stuff. I'm not bad at giving constructive criticism, but it's more just when it's something that I have to question their honesty and integrity. I don't like doing it, but you kind of have to do it sometimes. So I don't know if that makes sense to you, but it's
no, it does, because we actually have a very similar thing for our interns. So it's a clock in and out system. I have to improve their time cards at the end of the week. And, sometimes they're clocking in 60, 70 hours a week, and, over 40 hours is considered overtime. So you're paying them time and a half. So you got to be very careful with that. And one of the things I set the standard of very early is, don't abuse this, because then, I will come down on it, because it's something that, obviously I can't be giving away free hours. And, for the organization, of course, charging extra money. But I also know at the same time is I have to have at least some trust in them before I start taking it away. And it is a difficult process difficult conversation when you do have to have that initial conversation is, were you really working doing this? Because a lot of times, our people are going back home and actually working on video projects. And, I just have to trust that they're actually working from home, because I'm not there watching them do it. So it is a trust thing. So it is difficult. But, when you have to have those conversations, I'm right there with you. I've had many of those myself.
Yeah. No, and you bring up a good point about trust too. That's another big thing that is key when leading a team. Like, I just have found that guys that break that trust, it's just really difficult to, you can't trust them. It's very, very difficult to like give them something and know that they're going to get the job done, and then also know that they're actually doing what you're saying to do. And so that is a really, really good point about that. So along with that, and this is something that it just kind of was brought up recent when I was on like a leadership call at my work, but I was thinking about this, and I this is an angle that I've never really thought of before. But do you think that leading a team in today's world is even harder than, say, maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago? And that may be, and I want to caveat, it's like, that may be a little hard to answer, obviously, because, we're both fairly new at this, but I'm just curious what you think about that. Like, if you think it's something that, do you believe, though, it is harder today?
Oh, I would say two things. So the first thing is, when it has gotten easier for me, so I can only kind of go back, the 3 years when I first started. So it's gotten easier and harder in some ways at the same time. So, as I've slowly taken on more responsibility and, kind of pushed our content farther and farther, kind of what I was talking about earlier, when I first started, it was just myself leading a team of 4 interns. Now I have James, who was actually a former intern myself in 2021, super talented, creative out of University of South Carolina. Shout out James.
Hey.
So he's been a huge help to me already. It's been the first time in my career where I've actually been able to give off things that I've had on my plate and give them to James. As an example, we're having to give feedback to a lot of different videos and different content ideas. And, I was busy doing something else, dealing with something else. And it was the first time in my career where I could look to James and I said, hey, James, can you, handle this for me? Because I've never been able to do that, because I've always had to handle it myself. And, having that is really nice. So in that way, it's kind of gotten easier for me, to be honest. And it's allowed me to focus on bigger picture items. Then, I would say the first year I had managing interns was rough, I'd say. I
Okay.
was thrust into this new role and basically hey, you have 4 interns, and hey, basically good luck. I
Mm.
had no, I was a former intern, so I kind of knew how I was managed. I wanted to change up how I managed, how I manage, or how I felt like I was managed. I felt like I could manage better than that. Um, and it was my first real taste of managing people. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously, you aren't going to be good at anything you do for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a bit time of going through the process, but it was hard because I needed to humble myself and kind of take feedback from these interns, and the fact where, these were like 18, 19, 20-year olds in college, and I was sitting there asking them feedback, how can I be better for you? And it was
Mm-hmm.
me just kind of coming to them, just humbly being like, hey, like, thank you for obviously all the work you did for us, but how can I be better for you so I'm better for my interns in the future?
Yeah.
And every year I've actually done that, and every year I've actually implemented, things that they have given me as feedback, and changed things, for the next coming year. So now this is my third year managing, people and managing interns, and now I've gotten more responsibilities on my plate for being at, my in my role for so long. I've just taken on more and more things. Um, Now I'm just much better at managing people than I did, because I have
Mm.
processes in place that I didn't have processes and systems in place that I didn't have 2 years ago.
Mm.
And so, now I'm much better at managing people. So, I mean, yeah, it's easier and harder for me at the same time. And like I said, I'm very young in my career still, not very old. So yeah, that's what I
No.
would say.
Yeah, no, and I think you bring up a good point, and this is kind of where I'm going with this is, you're talking about being humble, and I think that even if you're young in leading a team, just like myself, that is the key. I think is being humble enough to ask the people that you're leading, that are most of the time younger than you, how
Have
can I do
to.
this better? Because that's the thing I'm understanding. And the reason I had this question was because something was brought up in one of our leadership calls, and the lady was talking about how at our company we have a span of 5 generations that work at our company, throughout the company. So, how they break down the
Yeah.
generations of like Gen Y, Gen Z, millennial, right? All that stuff. And you think about that and you're like, that makes leading a team. So for someone who is like a boomer or whatever, them leading
Yeah.
them leading like a Gen Z or a Gen, like whatever, like the youngest generation is, it's probably to them, it's like foreign. It's so far-fetched to know like maybe how to manage someone that young. And so then you have the millennials that are managing, younger generation of kids, or if we want to call them kids now. But it's like, it's so interesting because the way society is right now is that people are working longer. They're not necessarily retiring as early, right, as they used to. And so it's like you
Yeah.
have these workplaces that have 60-something-year-olds in it. And maybe not for you specifically, but like for me, it's just very interesting because what worked for that 60-year-old 25, 30 years ago might not work for that 23-year-old now. And that is something
Yep.
that kind of bothers me sometimes when I see in my industry where I have a person above me that wants to force this specific method down a younger person's throat of like, this is how you have to do it. It was hard for me, so it's got to be hard for you. You don't get to use these tools. It's like, I don't really agree with that, because to me, it's like, technology is crazy right now. We have so many things that
Crazy,
are at
dude.
our fingertips, right? And it's like, if there's something that's going to make that person's job easier, that younger person's job easier, it's like, why not give them the opportunity, or afford them the opportunity to have that tool or whatever it may be. And so for me, I feel like, just from my young like tenure of leadership right now, when it comes to leading a team, I think it is difficult because I see how there's like this tension between like the younger generation and the older generation. And if you don't have someone
Yes.
in the older generation that can humble themselves enough to be like, listen, okay, I know it's different now, so I'm gonna ask these kids, like, how can I do better? Because there's a lot of crap that goes on in the world now. There's a lot of just like that a lot of these young
dude.
yeah, like these younger generation of people coming through the workforce now. I mean, you know, I don't want to get super deep into this, but it's like, you know, there's, you know, tons of mental like health things, right? There's just so many things that these people are dealing with as well, that like it makes
Yes.
it very difficult, I think, for some of the older people in the workforce to understand. And so I don't know.
Yep.
That's just something that I don't know. What's your thoughts on that? I'm curious, like, feedback on that.
Oh yeah, one of the things that you said just right there at the end, and then I have like an example of this kind of how it relates. Was managing mental health, manage your own mental health,
Mm.
and to me, this is one of the biggest things that, or one of the biggest challenges that I have as well, is, you know, in the sports world and the content business, you work a lot of really long hours. You know, this past week I was pulling 12, 15-hour days. You know, my interns were out there, you know, grinding just as hard as I do. And one of the things I really tried to emphasize, and, you know, obviously there's this culture of grind, 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 grind. One of the things I tried to do is try to put almost like a halt to that, and,
Mm.
you know, make sure there is a emphasis on mental health. You know, in this content business and world, you know, sports really too, you know, at the end of the day, we still have a job to do, and we still have, you know, things we need to get done. And one thing I always say to my interns is, you know, you leave work today, leave work here. And when you're home, you
Mm.
need to be home,
Yeah, I like that.
because that allows them to really decompress and, you know, get away from, you know, thinking about videos, video ideas, you know, opening their laptop, you know, staring at the screen for longer hours than they already have. And really it allows them to, in my experience, you know, they feel more rested when they come back the next day. You know, they're not, like I said, an environment piece that I said is, you know, I want them to feel like they want to come back to work and, you know, having fun. You know, if I'm not giving them that proper rest and they're, you know, mentally and physically drained, you know, they're not going to have a good day when they show up, you know, trying to create content.
Mm.
That just has a very bad, you know, a very bad effect of, you know, now they're tired, they're mentally checked out, you know, now they're coming in and trying to have video ideas, and their creativity is just, you know, at an all-time low, because their, you know, their levels are just, their energy levels are just so low. You know, so prioritizing mental health, and, you know, within that too is taking care of your body, you know, proper hydration, nutrition. I harp on that all the time. Just, you know, I'm not like some health nut, but it does make a big difference.
Mm.
And kind of going back into, you're talking about the 5 generation thing, is, you know, I work in the world of social media, and, you know, these generations didn't grow up with social media, and now myself and, you know, the interns that I'm hiring are all about social media, you know, TikTok and everything.
Mm.
They're all about it, and they're watching it every single day, seeing trends happen. And the reality is, you know, a lot of really older, some of the older generation really hasn't picked up on TikTok, or, you
Mm.
know, Twitter or Instagram, whatever it is, right? um, and so, like, when we're trying to create video ideas, you know, sometimes the ideas are, you know, well, hey, like, why are you making that video? Now the explanation is, you know, well, you know, it's a TikTok video, and then the explanation is, well, what in the world is TikTok? Because
Mm.
now, you know, they don't know what TikTok is, and it's just, social media has changed so fast, and
Mm.
it continually grows all the time. And, you know, not to say that this older generation has been left behind, by any means, they haven't. um, but it just goes to show, just like these kids, and, you know, even us, you know, we grew up with all these technology, and it's just so normal for us to be so, like, uh, in it. And, you know, especially for me, because my job is swirled around social media all the time.
Mm.
It's just, um, it's just crazy how drastically it has changed, and some of the older generation has just, you know, slowly, not dwindled away, but, you know, not on these platforms.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point, man. And yeah, you bringing up the whole mental health thing about content creation is so true. As someone who, I've said it before in this channel as well, like I said, if there's anybody from my old viewership, but like, the content creation is hard, and it is, and
Easy, man.
people like, people might like, and the older generation might not think so. And even people that make millions and millions and millions of dollars from content creation, streaming, whatever it may be, it's so weird. It just does something to you mentally because your mind is always on and you can't
Always
turn
on,
it. You
dude.
can't turn it
That's
off.
so true.
Yeah. And it's just, I really like what you said about how you tell your team to just leave it at work, because that was my biggest issue when it came to content creation. Was I could just not, like, I'd be feeling like I needed to make a video at like 10 o'clock at night or 11 o'clock at night, and then like in the morning I'd be thinking about it. And it's so crazy. Like, if you don't have those boundaries, or if you don't leave work where work is at, that, yeah, it can just really bleed into your personal life, and that's not always good. So I really like that a lot. Yeah, and so that's kind of some good advice. And so that was kind of my last question here is, though, what advice would you give, though, to people that maybe aspire to be leaders of a team, or maybe they're a leader right now of a team and they're struggling,
Hey.
To lead, or they just don't know what the next step is? Like, what advice would you give?
Yeah, the first thing I would say is, your first time managing people isn't going to be easy. You need that experience of being able to manage people over, many years to, really truly feel comfortable managing people. Um, you know, you're going to be put in a position where you need to have hard conversations at times, whether it's, giving feedback or having to correct issues. It's all part of the process. And then
I really like the first one because, it's, I think people maybe go into their role thinking that they're going to just be amazing at it, event, like, and it's the first time they've ever done it. And you said it before in the podcast too, about how you're not going to be great necessarily at the first time you do something. And so I really like that. I think that's really good advice. And personally too, I think like you've already kind of given a lot of advice throughout this podcast, but like, I think you also talked about being humble. I think that's a big thing as well.
yes, that's what I was going to say.
Okay, there it is.
Being humble.
There
That's
it
what
is.
it was.
Okay, go ahead.
So just
Go
being
off, King.
humble.
Go off, King.
No, dude. It's just being humble, man. It's just lowering yourself to the people that you're talking to. I mean, not saying like they're lower than you or whatever, but obviously there is some hierarchy at the end of the day.
Mhm.
But you need that feedback from people who you are leading, because ultimately at the end of the day, you don't know what they are thinking every single day. Like, you don't know, you're not walking in their shoes when you're, showing up to work every single day and you're thinking everything is great. Then they're thinking, man, like, he just said this to me, or like, why am I doing this? Like, how can, like, they're thinking of ways like things can be better, because at the end of the day, they want their job to be easier too. And, taking that feedback from them to make their job easier makes your job easier, because if you're keeping your people happy and you're keeping your people wanting to come back every single day, your job is going to be that much more enjoyable for you and for them. And, you're ultimately just, helping people, continue.
Yeah.
And then I have another one too, which is
Do it.
mentorship for me is just being someone who can be there to just kind of help them and guide them along. For me and my interns, I take great pride in trying to make them grow. I always say to them, you come in here, you come maybe right here, and then, you grow up here,
Mhm.
right? Everyone comes in at different levels in the internship too, just because of their experiences, in colleges and whatever. But my job is fostering a world in a job environment where they can grow and they can learn what they want to learn. If they want to be better at shooting, they want to be better at editing, they want to be better in After Effects. It's my job to be able to put them in a position to either do it on the job and learn on the fly, and then help them, guide them along, or B, literally sitting down next to them, teaching them, coaching them on how to do a bunch of these things. So mentorship is huge for me, because, at the end of the day, you want to see your people grow.
Yeah.
So I don't want to see, an intern not getting a job after they've left my internship. And I've had a pretty good track record of getting my interns hired, graduating seniors at least, getting jobs after they've, finished an internship with me at USA because, I think, I put so much into them and I give them a lot of responsibility that
Mm.
they're able to, take that and just run with it and, hopefully, get a full-time role after, they leave this internship from me.
Yeah, no, that's I like that a lot. Mentorship is a great thing, and for me, I would say that I'd leave everyone here with two things. I think for me, the advice would be ownership, taking ownership of things as a leader.
Big.
It's a big thing. You really should take ownership of everything because it's a good practice to have, and accountability, right? And then the other thing for me is you kind of touched on this too. Like there is a hierarchy in a lot of ways. There has to be a hierarchy, but I always want to tell guys that you're never above doing a certain task, right? Like I'm never above doing a certain task. Like obviously there's certain caveats to that where like maybe like the president of the company can't go hit this site because he would charge like $2,000 to the client or something. It's like obviously something like that, right, might not happen. But as a manager, like I still do some of the grunt work that needs to be done with my guys, and because it's just you never want to make it seem like you've graduated out of something like that, because at the end of the day, it's like when the guys and girls see you next to them kind of doing those kind of things together, it really builds like a companionship, and it shows them that like you
100%.
are like right there with them. So I just think that's one of the biggest things I would give to anyone that wants to lead a team or is leading a team currently, is just making sure that you are still, again, humbling yourself and not thinking you're above said task. So yeah, man. But
It's awesome, man.
yeah.
That last bit that you said, that's important to me too, right? It's I want to give my interns an opportunity to do the work, but I also want to make sure that they know that they're not there alone,
Mm.
and I'm there with them. I'm there in the fire with them. I may not have the camera in my hand always or be the one editing, but I'm right there in the fire with them, next to them every single day. If I need to go grab a camera or something like that to help them, I'm willing to do it. It's not like I'm sitting here in my role now thinking I'm some like manager and just content planning and managing, and not being on the ground, not shooting, not editing still, because at the end of the day I'm still a creator
Mm.
and I just want to create, and it just happens to be that now I graduating to more roles that take the camera and the editing bay out of my hands, if you will. So yeah, I really like what you said there at the end. That was good, and the accountability piece is important as well. Just being accountable for your people, and accountable for your actions too.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, man. And yeah, and I appreciate having you on. Is there any place that people here that watch can find you on social media, or if so, shout it out, and I'll also put it in the description of the video as well in YouTube and Spotify.
I will say I am very poor about posting on my own social medias, just because I am constantly creating content for other people, to be honest. So that's why I'm so bad at my own. But you can find me at Colin Pelosi on all social media platforms. So it's the same thing. My name, ColinPelosi, on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, everything.
Nice, man. Well, yeah, dude, I appreciate it. I appreciate you coming on. And we'll definitely have you on some more in the future. And yeah, man.
It was good having talking with you, and talking some talk, and then hopefully we can sit down next to each other and talk and get it on video, because I think that'd be really cool too. But I enjoyed it, man. I thought the questions were really personable to me, and it's my daily life right now, really. So,
Yeah.
and just thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, no problem. And if you guys have any questions for us in the comment section or in general, definitely post that down below. And again, thank you to everyone that is a member here in the channel. And again, you can find this podcast on all the major podcast streaming platforms and on YouTube here if you want the video form of it. But thank you again, everyone. And thank you again, Colin, for joining us. But we are going to wrap it up, and we will see you guys on the next episode. Later, everyone.